So guys, yesterday we put out a video breaking down the moon and some developer insights. There were some things that I didn't include in yesterday's video because we kind of previously already covered it. But today, we're actually going to go through and break down all of the exotics that we have definitely seen, some of the new weapons we have seen, as well as some of these speculated exotics. Because yes, we've seen some supposed leaks on Reddit, but with no real definitive proof. But first, let's get into what we know. Returning exotics. No time to explain. This is a 360 round per minute pulse rifle and was really a good pulse rifle back in D1. A lot of people still didn't use it, but it had a very lengthy quest to get this weapon. Now, it came with the trait Rewind Again. Precision hits are immediately returned to the magazine, which allowed this pulse rifle to do pretty good damage against bosses by allowing you to sit there and just lay on the trigger. And of course, it came with full auto, which helped that as well. Intrinsically though, really neat about this weapon, it actually came with head seeker. So for those times when your shot does deviate, you'll be able to make up for it by getting extra precision damage. Now I will point out that this gun model is the same model for the Curse of Osiris pulse rifle Machina Day 4. But I can definitely see No Time to Explain returning, considering we are going to be in the Black Garden around a lot of Vex in regards to the raid. So yeah guys, I could definitely see this pulse rifle returning. And if there's any weapon that could possibly bring people back to using these high impact pulse rifles, I think No Time to Explain can do it. I know we have Redrick's broadsword, but looking at all of the pulse rifles in that entire archetype, it's definitely lacking. So bringing a pulse rifle, especially an exotic pulse rifle within that archetype, might really shake up the sandbox. Now moving on to the next weapon that we have seen, Monte Carlo. I think this is the first weapon all of us noticed in the Vidoc about a month ago. Yes, Monte will be returning. And back in Destiny 1, it was a 600 round per minute auto rifle. Now it came with the trait Monte Carlo method. Dealing damage with this weapon reduces your melee cooldown and grants a chance to fully charge your melee ability with each kill. Now for something like Destiny 1, there was a lot of cool things you could pull with Monte Carlo. Like I used to love rocking it with no backup plans and use my shotgun to get an overshield and then swap to Monte Carlo to recharge my melee. But there was a lot of ways you can utilize Monte's perk to consistently keep providing you with melees. For something like D2, I could definitely see Monte Carlo being used with something like Peregrine Greaves. You could also pair it with Bottom Tree Striker or even go with Middle Tree Night Stalker to consistently keep throwing out smoke. There's a lot of different ways that Monte Carlo can fit inside of Destiny 2's sandbox. And more than likely, the way Bungie brings back these exotics, they're not just copy and paste. So it's a good chance these returning exotics will either have all of its intrinsic perks and traits merged together as its one exotic perk, or they could just scrap it and go with a completely new perk. Normally, the perk is better than its D1 version, but remember, Khepri Sting, that perk is different than it was back in D1, and yes, it is way worse. We actually need to review that exotic at some point. Now, moving on to the exotics that are new ones that we have seen. Now, this is probably not all of the exotic weapons. These are just the ones we have seen so far outside of the speculated exotics. First up, we've got the heavy bow. Yes, this is a bow that will be in our heavy slot, and it's got a very large AoE knockback effect. Now, we don't really know how much damage it does, but we do see it a lot. Lots of screenshots of our Guardians carrying around this bow. Now, I was half expecting a bow to become a special weapon before becoming a heavy weapon. So this is going to be interesting to see how this one plays out and how it compares to our other heavy weapons in D2. Now, the other weapon that we saw is, of course, the Solar Sniper hand cannon. Now, again, this one is a special weapon, but in hand cannon form. Essentially, think of it as a sniper, but it has the gun model of a hand cannon. Now, whether or not it has the fluidity of some of our hand cannons really is going to play a big factor in how this weapon performs. I'm very curious how they're going to balance this out inside of Crucible. The rate of fire seems pretty quick, which makes me wonder if the hand cannon will be able to one-shot crit inside of Crucible. If it can, and it has the fluidity of a hand cannon, like it truly feels like a hand cannon just has a scope on it, oh, it could be nasty. Now, our next exotic is also being speculated as well of possibly being the raid exotic, which is, of course, the trace rifle. Essentially, while firing it on an enemy, it opens up this ginormous crit spot and may potentially increase crit damage for everyone, not just its base crit multiplier, but being an exotic weapon that requires one person to focus fire might actually increase that crit multiplier for the rest of the fire team. Now, people are speculating that this is the raid exotic. And a lot of people said that there's no way in hell Bungie would show a raid exotic in the Vidoc, but previously, even last year, when we saw the Vidoc for Forsaken, Bungie did show off 1,000 voices. And then if you look back as far as Rise of Iron, we also got to look at Outbreak Prime. Now, they didn't show a lot of it. It's obviously just a glimpse. But the point is that it's not unlikely for Bungie not to include the raid exotic inside of one of their Vidocs. And considering the look of this trace rifle, it definitely has that Vex look to it. But whatever the case, it definitely is a neat concept for an exotic. Now moving on to the exotic bug-powered LMG. Now we saw this at GuardianCon. I looked at it yesterday. I didn't even realize that that was it. I saw some crazy concept weapons when I was at GuardianCon this past year. So I was a bit confused when it came to what was coming in Shadowkeep and then what was of course just concept art. Regardless though, this is supposed to be coming to us, which is a machine gun being powered here by a fossilized hive bug something. It's hive magic, boys. I don't know any other information outside of that or what its exotic perks could be, but feel free to check out A Room Effects, guys. This is actually their video right here, and they do all kinds of gun models, weapon models, God of War models. They're amazing. Now, some other weapons that we saw is of course the feather hand cannons. The hand cannons got some feathers on it. Now, I don't have the tweet, but it's been stated that this weapon is actually a legendary weapon. I think Inkuch said that Cosmo or someone had tweeted out that this is not a new exotic weapon. Now let's move on into the speculated exotics, okay? This is where things get a little weird. We first mentioned Chronoclass. Now we had an ornament back in Destiny 1 called Chrono Shot. So this kind of like rubbed people wrong on Reddit. A lot of people just went ahead and said that this leak is invalid, as there is no way in hell we would receive Vex Mythoclass as Chronoclass. But again, I wouldn't rule it out completely. The raid will be based in the Black Garden, which should be based around the Vex pretty heavily. But again, we are really getting off in the realm of speculation. There is nothing remotely reflecting the look of Vex Mythoclass. This is just a supposed leak from a Redditor, and a Redditor that I don't even really know. His posts just happened to catch a lot of traction. Now, Bungie did talk about Pocket Infinity briefly. Was it Josh Hamrick? I know Josh isn't at Bungie anymore, but I want to say it was an interview with him, and they were talking about Sandbox and of course bringing back Pocket Infinity. But essentially what they stated was that Pocket Infinity kept crashing Destiny 2. Now a lot of people wrote it off and said, all right, well, Pocket Infinity's not coming back. The fact that Bungie was even looking into it and actually imported it and was play testing it to see if they can bring back Pocket Infinity makes me believe that they're eventually going to bring it back. Now whether or not it's going to be Shadowkeep or one of the seasons following, I wouldn't rule out Pocket Infinity returning entirely. Now, another speculated exotic is, of course, Necrochasm. Considering that these are the quest steps for Necrochasm and how much it ties into Eris Morn, and of course, Crotus coming back to life, or at least his haunted version of himself is going to be alive. Yes, I can see why there's speculation of a return of this auto rifle, but there's also going to be a return of many of our other past enemies. Gaul, Skolas, Atheon. So, like, at what point does it stop, right? Are we just going to bring back all of these exotics that was like based on those enemies? I'm not saying it's not gonna happen. I would love for Necrochasm to come back. It was a fantastic auto rifle. It had such a cool perk there with Cursebringer, allowing for the weapon to trigger Curse Thrall explosions on kills. And considering we don't really have 900 round per minute auto rifles, except for maybe like Suros Regime when it's fully spun up, this could be the first 900 round per minute auto rifle in the game. So I would 100% be hyped to see this weapon. And whether you're a PvE player or a PvP player, this weapon performed great in both activities. So guys, that is our exotic breakdown. Pretty much every exotic we have seen, all the speculated exotics, as well as returning ones. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Just wanted to get all of these and put them together for one video. We did leave one off on this list, which is actually Kvostov. And like the only reason why people are speculating its return is because of New Light. A lot of people are asking what weapon it is that Guardians are going to spawn with. Will they have Kvostov in their inventory since they're going to be in Old Russia on the original D1 mission? It may be possible that yes, the OG version of Kvostov will be present, but it does not necessarily mean that the exotic version will be. Again, man, there's so many things to speculate about there. Either way it goes, I'm hyped, boys. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.